Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. This is the 17th part of What If Deku Can't Stop Adopting Kids. Hope you enjoy. Link to the original story and author in the description. Chapter 81, Feline Frenzy. After all that traveling and fighting, the intruder was quite thirsty. Thankfully, she was able to sniff out a nearby lake, which she then booked it to immediately. Once she reached the edge of the lake, she dunked her head in the water and started drinking up for a few seconds, before taking her head back out. She then got up and started to shake her head around, flinging the water off her face and hair. That's good water. Fresh and clean. With her thirst quenched, she got up and turned around, ready to start traveling again. And then she heard something begin to surface from out of the water. Oh! The woman turned back towards the water. Now what's this? Then, the sea phylong broke through the surface of the water. Rah! The massive serpentine dragon turned its head towards the woman, who was standing at the edge of the lake, a good distance away from it. Hell yeah! I'm fighting a dragon. The woman grinned and got into a pouncing stance. Alright. Let's go. Unfortunately for her, the phylong had no intention of getting close. Instead it charged up an electricity blast and shot out its laser at her from a distance. Oh shit! The woman said as she quickly jumped to the side. When she saw the attack coming, the laser whizzing past her and destroying all the trees behind her, leaving many of them singed and burned. She looked at the damage that beam did to the trees with wide eyes, before looking back at the phylong, already charging up another beam. That is so cool. Also super deadly. The woman commented. Alright, so this fight is gonna be on the water. Well, that's kind of annoying. She ducked down, avoiding another beam that flew over her head. But if it's what I gotta do. The woman then ran onto the surface of the water and ran atop it. Despite what many people thought, you didn't need to have All Might level speeds to run on water. You don't. You only really needed to be a fraction of that speed to accomplish this feat. Even still, the speeds needed to accomplish this were outside of what a normal human could accomplish, and even for this incredibly fast intruder, she needed to make sure she ran at top speed and didn't stop moving. The woman ran towards the phylong, quickly approaching the draconic sea monster. Curiously, the phylong stopped charging its beam, and instead, it swerved around and tried to swipe at her with its tail. The woman jumped up, barely managing to dodge the attack, but as its tail went by, she grabbed onto it with one of her arms and hung on. The phylong noticed this and flailed its tail around in the air wildly, trying to shake her off, but the woman held on tight and crawled her way up the tail fin. Ugh! Think I'm gonna hurl. The woman said as the high winds hit her face. She continued to crawl up its tail fin and onto its body, using her claws to make her way up the monster, towards its head. The phylong was decidedly happy about this and decided to do something about it by diving underwater. Oh! The woman thought as she realized she was going into the lake. She took a deep breath as she and the phylong submerged. From there on, crawling up the monster was even harder as it swam around at high speeds, and the woman could feel the water pushing against her, like gravity fighting against her body. She had to really embed her claws into the beast to keep herself from falling off it. Not to mention she had to do all this while holding her breath. Man, this is some test. The woman thought as she climbed, now reaching the middle of the monster's serpentine body. The phylong swam down to the bottom of the laker, before making a U-turn upwards, swimming rapidly towards the surface. Fwash! The phylong shot out of the water and into the air, bringing the woman along with it. This did cause the woman to stagger a bit, but she held on tight, and since she was no longer underwater for the moment, she finally got the chance to breathe. However, this wouldn't last, as the phylong turned its body around once more, facing its head towards the water, as gravity effect, and it fell back into the water with a loud splash. After a few more minutes she finally made her way to the back of its head. She raised one of her claws up and tried to stab its head through its mask. However, this failed, and she only created a scratch. No good. It's harder to hit things while underwater. Especially when the water is pushing against me. The woman thought. I need to get rid of the armor. She kicked off her shoes, allowing them to get lost in the lake, and unleashed the claws on her toes, digging them into the side of the monster, to make sure she didn't fall off. Then she dug her nails underneath the mask and pushed upwards with all her strength. Rag, ha! The beast roared as it felt its mask getting pulled off its face. It wasn't an easy task for the woman. It was like trying to rip a nail off of a person's finger, but 1,000 times harder, and she had to do it while holding her breath. Despite this, she could feel it coming off, as the flesh connecting the bone mask to its head snapped off and she slowly raised the bone off its face. It was hellish, trying to do something strenuous, while not being able to breathe. But with one final push, she lifted its mask off its face. Rag high! The Phylong roared in agony, as its mask fell to the lake bed, and its black blood started spewing everywhere. The woman then crawled up to the center of its head and plunged her claws through its skull. Roar-ag-ag! The Phylong gave one last roar of agony before its body relaxed, and it began to fade away. As the Phylong died, the woman raised her arms out and tried to let out a celebratory shout. Only for water to rush in her mouth, as she quickly realized that she was still underwater, and now she would need to get some air before she died. She panicky swam upwards, going as fast as she could. The woman broke the surface, and quickly spat out the water that had entered her mouth, and breathed in as much air as she could. After getting in enough air, she swam to land, crawling up out of the water, laid down on the grass, and looked up at the sky. God, I hate fighting in water. Thump! 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 It was then that 2 Geist, in stone golem bodies, came out, looking for trouble. Oh! The intruder groaned as she got back onto her feet. Couldn't you give me a minute? XXXXXXXXXXXX. Izuku watched as the intruder fought the Geists. They didn't stand a chance, but at the very least, they could distract her long enough for the heroes to get here. He'd called the police as soon as she got past level 3 security, but he had no idea when they would get here. All he could do right now is hope that either level 4 security would handle her, or the heroes would. Achiko ran into the room. All the kids are inside, what's the situation? She just defeated a sea Phylong and 2 Geists. And she'll be approaching the house in about 20 minutes. Izuku told her. She's really strong. I don't think anyone in your class could beat her. Not even you. Achiko bit her lip. We'll see about that, if it comes down to it. Hopefully it won't, Izuku said sternly. She's back on the move, but she's approaching the Nuclavi. Let's see how she deals with this. XXXXXXXXXXXXX. The woman was running through the forest when she made it to another clearing. However, it wasn't quite clear. Because standing in the center of it was the Nuclavi. The rider hunched over on its horse until it heard the woman come, and then it changed its posture, its bones giving off a chilling crunching sound with each movement. Oh! Scary! The woman said, not looking intimidated at all by its nightmarish appearance. Roar ha! The Nuclavi let out an ear-piercing scream that caused the woman to recoil in pain and cover her ears. Ack! The woman howled in pain, as the beast's roar caused her immense pain, and kept her rooted in place for a second. The monster then shot out its stretchy arm at her, punching her with great force. Ack! The woman cried out in pain as she was punched in the stomach, getting the wind knocked out of her, and sending her flying through 4 trees. She landed on her back, as she struggled to breathe. The Nuclavi charged towards her, intent on running her over with its horse. Despite still struggling to breathe, the woman was able to jump out of the way, as the horse charged past her. As the Nuclavi stopped its charge so it could turn around, the woman finally caught her breath and got back up to her feet. All right. Time to kill this thing. The woman decided. Meanwhile, the Nuclavi had turned and shot out its arm at her again. However, this time she was ready, and dodged the attack, and slashed at its stretchy limb. Boing! However, the attack did very little, as instead of cutting through his slim and seemingly fragile arm, the arm just moved with her claw, as she plucked at it like a guitar string. The arm reeled back, and the Naklavi shot out its other arm at her, which she promptly dodged by jumping onto the side of a tree. She then jumped to the next tree, and the next tree, jumping from tree to tree at astonishing speeds. The woman jumped through the trees around the Naklavi, confusing it as it kept turning its head to try and see where its target was, but she was simply too fast. Slice! Before it even knew what happened, it was attacked from behind, the woman striking the back of its neck with her claws, intent on taking its head off. However, its neck was tougher than anticipated, so rather than taking its head clean off, it just made a deep gash in the back of its neck. The woman then flipped mid-air, before landing on her feet, and then pouncing back towards a tree, before going back to jumping from tree to tree. Seeing as it couldn't keep track of his opponent at all, and if she landed another attack like that she'd kill it, the Naklavi needed to do something. And so it did, spinning around while extending its arms, knocking down all the trees around it. The woman jumped into the air from the tree she was in, just as it was going down. Naklavi stopped spinning and then launched its arm at her. Being unable to dodge while in the air, the woman simply kicked the hand away, deflecting the attack, allowing her to land safely on the ground. Once Naklavi retracted its arm, it then extended them back out to both sides and spun around. The woman ducked under the spinning arms, running low to the ground on all fours. She then quickly ran onto the horse's leg and crawled up it before it could do anything until she was latched onto the side of the horse, looking right at the rider's rotating waist. The woman then latched her claws into the rider's waist, and since it was rotating, her claw was being dragged across its waist, injuring the beast as her claws tore it up and dug deeper into it. Seeing as it was hurting itself, the Naklavi stopped spinning, but before it could do anything about the woman latched to its waist, she jumped up, now hanging off its shoulders, with her claw raised up to its neck. Slash! 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 And like a lumberjack chopping away at a tree, the woman slashed away at the Naklavi's neck, until it was severed, and his head came off. Like all the other Grimm, its body went limp, the horse's legs collapsing and the light going out in its eyes, as it started to fade away. The woman jumped off of the fading monster, not even taking the time to wait for the monster to fade, before going back on the run. XXXXXXXXXX. Momo walked into Izuku's office and saw him and Achiko staring into the seer. The kids are starting to get anxious, is she down yet? No, Izuku said just as nervously. She's fighting the sulfur fish right now. Oh, one just got a hit in on her. Oh fuck. Oh shit. Oh, fuck. Momo heard the woman yell, causing her to wince slightly. The sulfur fish is something that she wouldn't sick on her worst enemy, but she was rooting for them to at least weaken the woman. Will those defeat her? Momo asked. Absolutely not. She's already taken out about 100 of them. Izuku said. But given how many there are, it's gonna take her a while. This should hold her long enough for the other Grimm to get close. The hound should be approaching the house now, and the wyvern is approaching her location. Can any of them defeat her? Momo asked. Maybe, Izuku said. She should be getting tired by now. Claspy couldn't even get past level 3 security, and there were 20 of them. Momo thought aloud. And this woman is fighting level 4 Grimm by herself. These are the kinds of enemies we'll have to fight one day. We have so far to go. Well, we'll have to get ready quick, Achiko said, giving Momo a determined look. If she gets past the hounds, then it'll be up to us to defend the kids. No, Izuku said simply. What? Achiko quickly turned her head to Izuku, giving him a bewildered look. You'd all die. Or at the very least, most of you would. Izuku told her, his fist clenching. I can't send you out there when we have a better option. What better option? Achiko asked. Izuku stayed quiet for a moment, looking conflicted. I hope it doesn't come to this, but there is one, almost surefire way of defeating her, but if it doesn't work, I hope it doesn't come to that. Achiko and Momo looked at each other in confusion and concern. If none of those Grimm can beat her, then who? Momo stopped, as she suddenly realized who Izuku had in mind. Oh. Right. Them. Chapter 82, Nigh at What You Think. As woman could see the house in the distance. And she was approaching quickly. Seems like the test is almost over. The woman breathed a sigh of relief. The fatigue was really starting to set in now. Honestly, she hoped there weren't too many fights from this point on. Rah-ha! And then suddenly a wyvern flew over her, before turning midair, and few yards in front of her. Ugh! I like a good fight and all, but I'm really getting tired of this. The woman said as she got into a fighting pose. She dashed under its head, and slashed at its throat. However, this did minimal damage, just creating some light scratch marks. Crap! The woman cursed, realizing this thing was gonna be tough. The wyvern raised its head, and the woman dashed back to avoid being crushed, as the draconic creature slammed its head down into the dirt. The woman then jumped on top of the wyvern and started slashing at the exposed parts of its back. However, this still didn't do all that much damage. Damn, this thing is tough. The woman cursed before suddenly she felt the wyvern start to rise. The wyvern flapped its wings and started rising off the ground, into the air. As the wyvern ascended and changed angles, its head pointing up towards the sky, the woman lost her footing and started to fall off the creature. She tried to dig into it with her claws, but they couldn't dig in deep enough to keep her from falling. However, before she fell off the creature entirely, she managed to grab onto one of its back spikes and held onto it as the wyvern flew through the air. Okay, I can't hurt it, so how do I hurt this thing? The woman wondered, taking a second to think, before her eyes widened, as she came up with an idea. That might work. But I need to get to its head. I'll have to wait for it to dive down first. I just have to hang. Suddenly, black liquid shot out of its back into the air, and took form as two griffins, that dove at her with their claws extended outwards. Ugh! The woman groaned as she got ready to fight them off. The first griffin had its claws batted away by the woman before she slit its throat, before repeating this process with the other griffin. After that, the wyvern finally changed its position and started flying downwards, causing the woman to fall forwards, towards its head. She let go of the back spike, letting herself fall forward. Then when she got close enough, she grabbed the little curved piece of bone that was at the edge of the wyvern's snout, leaving her dangling in front of its huge maw. Rah! The dragon roared as it tried to snap forward and eat her. However, all this did was flail her about. You want a taste of me, big guy? The woman shouted. Well, bon appetit. She then swung her legs back, and then swung forward, and let go of the snout, flinging herself into the dragon's mouth. The wyvern closed its mouth, not wanting its prey to fall out, as it felt them go down its throat. And for a second, the beast thought it had won. But then it felt the woman tearing apart its insides. Rah-ha! The beast stopped flapping, as it felt the horrible pain of its insides getting torn apart by sharp claws. Crash! It fell to the ground, kicking up wind and dirt around it. The beast trembled a bit, before going limp, dying, and fading away. And as the wyvern fully faded, the woman was left there, lying on her back, taking a bit of rest. Ugh! The woman groaned again. I really hope that was the last obstacle. A few moments later, the woman got back up and went back to running towards the house. XXXXXXXXX. It took a few minutes, but she finally reached the front gates. Finally! The woman said, as she crouched down, and got ready to leap over the gate. When she heard something behind her. She took a deep breath and turned around. All right. Come out and fight me. Then, two hounds came out of the forest, one crawling out on all fours, and the other flying above her with a pair of wings. This thing again. And there's two. And it can fly. The woman shouted out in shock. All right, doggies. I know your weakness now, so let's see how long you last. Then, the flying one let out a jet of flames from its mouth, which the woman jumped to the side to dodge. Meanwhile, the other one rushed forward, lunging at her. She was about to dodge to the right. However, she saw that the other hound was waiting for her to dodge, so it could blast whichever direction she chose with fire. So instead of dodging, she would have to approach this situation head-on. She stood up and ran towards the hound, before sliding under it. Then she brought her feet up and kicked it into the air, towards the other flying hound. The flying hound caught its ally, before swinging it around and throwing it back at her. The woman jumped up to her feet and lunged upwards at the hound, thrusting her arm right through its neck before it could react and protect itself. She swiped her arm through its flesh, beheading the monster. Both she and the head fell to the ground, a few feet away from each other. The woman turned and dashed towards the fallen head. However, the hound that was still in the air grew a bunch of arms from its sides and chest, and shot them down at both her in the head. Ack! The woman cried as 3 of the arms hit her and pinned her to the ground, while another arm picked up the severed hound head and brought it up towards itself. The woman slashed at the arms holding her down, freeing herself. Unfortunately for her, in that time, the other hound had already grown back its body and dropped back down to the ground. Then both hounds grew armor on their necks. Meaning that same trick wasn't gonna work anymore. Damn, these things regenerate too quickly. If one of them can distract me long enough, then it won't matter if I behead one of them. I either have to destroy their heads or behead them at the same time. The woman said before her ears detected something odds. What's that behind me? The woman then jumped to the side, just in time, as a grim apple landed where she just stood, biting into the ground. Is that an evil apple? The woman said in disbelief. She looked behind her and saw that the tree behind the gate, swinging its branches upwards, tossing grim apples into the air, to land on the battlefield. What the fuck? She didn't have much time to be confused about this, as the grounded hound charged at her from her right, while the flying hound dived at her from the left. So she ran straight ahead, past both Grim, and then backflipped to avoid another apple. Both Grim turned around to face her, but then the flying one got hit in the face with an apple, which gnawed into its face, seemingly unable to determine friend from foe. The flying hound pulled the apple off its mask. However, there were some light scratch marks, which quickly healed. Okay, its armor's not as tough as I thought it was. I can use that. The woman thought. And maybe I can use these apples too. More apples rained down on them, and a few of them were heading downward near the woman. She jumped up and kicked a few of the apples at the hounds. The one on the ground jumped to the left to avoid them, while the flying one breathed fire to incinerate them. And while they were distracted doing that, the woman ran to the right of the flying one and lunged at it. Seeing as its mouth was preoccupied shooting fire at the apples, the hound had no choice but to grow 2 more arms out of its side and launch them at the woman. The woman smacked the first arm away but then grabbed the second one, flipping mid-air, and tugging the arm, using it to launch herself at the hound even faster. The woman landed on top of the flying hound, wrapping her legs around its neck. She raised up her arms, and then launched her left arm forward in a thrusting motion, striking the hound's armored head, and creating a large crack in the armor. Just as she was about to plunge her other arm forward and impale the thing's brain, however, the hound had other ideas. Arms grew out of the hound's back, and grabbed the woman's arm, holding it back, before the other arms wrapped around her entire body, trapping her on top of the hound, and holding her in place. Ack! Let go! The woman struggled against the arms, trying to move her raised arm forward, but her fatigue was showing its ugly face, and it was really hard to muster up the strength to free herself. The hound rotated its head around, pointing its maw at the woman, and opened up. She saw the fire start forming in its mouth, and she knew if she didn't free herself now, then she'd be engulfed in flames. Her fight or flight instincts kicked in, and she felt a rush of adrenaline, and with that she managed to free her raised arm, and thrust it into the hound's flaming maw, impaling its brain, and burning her arm. Shit! The woman hissed as she felt the flames engulf her arm. Fortunately, it didn't last very long, as with the hound's death, the flames died down, and its wings stopped flapping, and it started falling to the ground. However, as its ally was falling down, the other hound launched its own flamethrower attack at the woman, as soon as the other hound died. Aghh. The woman cried out in pain as the flames hit her already fire-damaged arm. As soon as the dead and dissipating hound hit the ground, the woman jumped off of it, escaping the flames. However, while she was distracted by that, an apple came flying down and hit her shoulder, biting down into it. Aha! The woman cried as the apple bit into her flesh. Before it could do too much more damage, she grabbed it and crushed it, causing it to dissipate and vanish. She flipped mid-air and landed on her feet, before quickly dashing back into the forest and hiding behind a tree. The woman was breathing heavily, pain and exhaustion taking its toll on her heavily. She looked at her damaged arm and shoulder. The burns were bad, and wound from the apple was pretty deep and bleeding. She could still move the arm a bit, but for combat purposes, it was pretty useless. Meaning she had to kill this remaining hound, with 3 limbs left. Alright. Think. How do I kill this thing? She thought. It has a brain. So it probably doesn't appreciate getting hit really hard in the head. So I guess I'll just do that. She dashed out from behind the tree, and forward towards the hound, at the fastest speed she could muster. The hound tried to shoot out fire at her, however, the woman got there too fast, and kicked its lower jaw up, forcing its mouth shut. Then she swiped her claw down, leaving a gash in its head armor, and forcing its head down, where she then kicked it to the side, and then kicked it again, and then slashed at it again. She continued to assault its head with attacks, disorienting it, leaving it little time to think. It tried to lunge forward and attack her with its claw, but she jumped back, to dodge it, before jumping back towards it, and continuing her assault on its head. The hound tried jumping back to escape the assault and heal itself, however, the woman jumped forward with it and kept hitting its head. No matter how it tried to run away, the woman was too fast and kept hitting it. Its armor was now thoroughly cracked, and she was doing damage faster than it could heal. Considering its brain was being bashed against its skull, it was rather hard for the hound to think. But it knew that it was going to die. This woman was too strong, and too fast, none of its attacks would land. But at the very least, it could potentially bring her down with it. The woman raised her arm back, ready to thrust it through the hound's brain and kill it, but she hesitated when she saw light leaking from the cracks in the hound's armor. And then its whole body started to glow. Then her instincts screamed at her, get away. She jumped back, and kaboom! The hound exploded, creating a massive blast that engulfed the woman, before sending her flying back, crashing through several trees, before landing a few dozen feet away. Oh! The woman groaned. She was in so much pain right now, and it didn't help that it felt like the world was spinning. She laid there for a couple minutes, letting herself recover from that last attack, before pulling herself up to her feet. Ack! That explosion did a number on her, creating some more burns on her body, as well as a few other injuries, and she definitely had some broken and bruised bones in her legs, ribs, and arms. Alright. That had to be the last obstetrical. She said to herself as she walked towards the house again. Except maybe that tree, I could probably kill that thing. And so she kept walking, all the way back to the house, ignoring the overwhelming pain she was in. She got back to the gates, only to find they had been blown apart by the explosion. And standing there at the center of it all was Sanson. The woman's eyes widened. Oh, I know you, Yura. Without much hesitation, Sanson launched forward, creating several hands to try and grab her. She jumped back, hissing as the pain from all her injuries made this rather difficult to do. And landing was even worse. The pain that came when she hit the ground caused her to freeze for a second, and that second was enough for Sanson's hands to grab her. She tried to struggle out of them, but at this point, most of her strength had been sapped. Sanson's arms raised her up into the air, encasing her body in slime, further trapping her. Once the woman was high enough in the air, she turned her upside down and then slammed her into the dirt. And once the woman's head hit the ground, everything went dark. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX and slowly opened her eyes. She was now in Izuku's office, laying on the floor, staring up at Izuku, who was behind his desk. Her body was of course restrained heavily. First, her limbs were stuck together using Mineta's balls, then they stuck Mineta's balls to each one of her fingers, ensuring she couldn't use her claws, and then finally, she was wrapped in several layers of Ceros tape. And Izuku was not alone in the room either. Kirishima and Achiko were also present, standing alongside him. Lastly, there were also two bearing elves, holding her down to the ground. Ow! The woman groaned as she felt the pain of all her injuries coursing through her body. You woke up sooner than expected, Izuku said. He was wearing the hood of his robe, so she couldn't see his face, but recognized his voice. Your caretaker. The woman stated, looking excited. Yes? Izuku was surprised that she'd refer to him by that title. Typically the only people who referred to him by that name were Kiba and her fans. Who sent you? Achiko asked angrily, getting straight to the point. Sent me? The woman asked, looking confused. Don't play dumb, Achiko told her aggressively, giving her an absolutely killer glare. Who's the person trying to kill Izuku? The woman once again just looked confused. I don't know. If I did, then I'd slash him with my claws. No one gets away with hurting Lady Kiba's caretaker. Everyone stared at her in disbelief, and for a minute, there was silence. So, you didn't come here to kill me? Izuku asked. What? Why would I want to kill you? The woman asked, looking genuinely shocked. Wait, if you didn't come here to kill Izuku, then why did you destroy all of the security Grim? Achiko shouted. Grim. That's what they were called. Thank you, that was bothering me so much. The woman smiled before frowning as she took in the rest of what Achiko said. Wait, security, does that mean that wasn't a test? A test? Izuku asked, sounding just as confused as she was. Yeah, a test. To see if I was good enough for the security guard job. The woman explained. Once again, there was a minute of silence, as everyone stared at her dumbfounded. So let's get this straight, Izuku said. You came here to ask for a job? Aha! The woman nodded, only to stop when she realized that moving was a really bad idea. Ow. My head. And you thought that I send the Grim after you, as a test, to see if you were strong enough? Izuku asked. Yup. The woman confirmed. Okay, how would I know to test you for that, if I didn't know who you were, and why you're here? Izuku asked, poking a massive hole in her logic. The woman's eyes widened, as she realized that her assumption made no sense. Oh, yeah, that's And you didn't think that if you barged in on his private property, not too long after an assassination attempt, with no introduction, and started beating up our security system, that we might think you were an intruder? Achiko asked. Ops. The woman said. Once again, there was silence, as the three didn't really know how to respond to such stupidity. So, about the job? The woman asked. Izuku slammed his head down onto his desk. That was enough of today. Izuku was too tired to deal with absurdity right now. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX. The next day was rather busy for Izuku, as he had to deal with the cleanup. First, he had to calm down the kids, assure them that there was in fact, not actually an assassin, just an idiot. Second, he had to make plans for Yami to spend a day in the city so he could stock up enough negativity to replenish all the Grim that were destroyed. Third, he had to get to work on constructing a fence around the forest, because apparently, signs weren't enough. And lastly, was dealing with the woman in question. Which led to this moment, where Izuku was behind his desk, addressing 1A while his mother watched the children. Okay, so I looked up information about our intruder yesterday, Izuku told them. Her name is Sori Jaga. And she belongs to the Nekinanako Foundation. The Nekinanako Foundation. Mineta gasped. I presume you know what that is, Mineta? Ida asked him. If Mineta knows what it is, then it's probably inappropriate, Jiro said. The Nekinanako Foundation is a foundation dating back to the era when quirks first appeared, Mineta explained eagerly. You see, back when the first people with cat quirks came into existence, people realized how much money could be made in less than ethical ways. So they gathered pretty much everyone they could with a cat-related quirk and started selling, buying, and breeding cat girls for profit. This was illegal, of course, and their practices were pretty much slavery combined with eugenics, so when heroes came around, they busted up these businesses pretty quickly. But when the cat people got free, they realized they too could make the same amount of money their captors did and made the Nekananako Foundation, the world's leading business in catgirl related, well, anything. You want to rent a catgirl maid? Done. You want a catgirl to call you Oni-chan? You go to them. You want to adopt a baby catgirl? You can get that too. Every catgirl is bred and trained to be the best in their field. And that typically means they're all either super cute or super hot. So basically, they take people with cat quirks, pay them to have sex with each other, then either sell the baby to someone who ordered it, or train them from birth and essentially force them to be fetish fuel for money, Toru said, no one being able to see the disgust on her face. Well, I mean it's less hot when you say it like that. Mineta responded. Leave it to Mineta to know the history of a morally shady company that runs on cute girls, Shiro said. Well, thank you for saving me the trouble of explaining it at least, Izuku told him. Anyway, Suri is one of their new lines of combat catgirls, meant to be rented out as bodyguards, called Comcat Girls. That name is terrible, Shoji stated bluntly. Yeah, anyway, her quirk is called Ultimate Breed, Izuku explained. Essentially, after a couple hundred years of breeding different catgirls together, she a perfect mix of every big cat you can think of, put together to create the ultimate feline predator, combined with human aspects to make her even more deadly. She's stronger, faster, and tougher than any other catgirl in existence. At least that's what the website said, and after seeing what she did to the Grimm, I'm inclined to agree. She even got a bodyguard license at an astonishingly young age. A bodyguard's license was a lot like a hero's license, in that allowed the use of a quirk to combat criminals, but it was much more limiting. Someone with this license was only allowed to use their quirk in case their contractor is threatened, anything else is still illegal. Getting one isn't extremely difficult though, as the test was said to be hard, that with all the training you'd need to do to pass it, you might as well just become a pro hero. As such, most people opted to just become pro heroes instead, as being a hero came with fewer limitations and more fame. As such, people with bodyguard licenses were rare but very powerful. So why did she come here? Todoroki asked. Well, after the police took her away, they got the full story, Izuku told them. Apparently, she was a huge fan of Kiba, and after seeing the assassination attempt on me, and then realizing that I was hiring staff, decided to see if I would hire her to be part of security. It never occurred to her to just call me ahead of time, or use the front gate, and when the Grimm started attacking her, she thought we were testing her to see if she was skilled enough for the job. So she's just an idiot then, Jiro said. Yeah, geez, even I'm not that dumb, Kaminari commented. So what do we do now? Momo asked. Sue them? Well, I have a meeting with a representative of their company, to discuss how we'll handle this going forward, Izuku said. Which is why I called you here. I need you to make sure the kids stay away from the office and don't do anything regrettable in retribution. The meeting is in an hour, so I would prefer if you did this now. Understood. The children will be under our watchful eyes. Edith said. Class 1A. Time to get to work. Right. They responded. XXXXXXXXXX. An hour later, the representative had arrived. Izuku didn't know what to expect, but he did expect this. The representative was around his age seemingly, and was of course a catgirl, with long pink curly hair, and pink ears and a tail, wearing a rather provocative red dress, that gave pretty much everyone a clear view of her feminine assets. Assets that she had an abundance of, to say the least. Alongside her were two much taller and older bodyguards, wearing the same outfit Suri was wearing, implying it was some kind of uniform. One that showed off more skin than Izuku was comfortable with. Although given that this was a company that sold based on cuteness and sex appeal, maybe this is exactly what he should have been expecting. And to be fair, it was pretty effective as Izuku's face immediately went red, and he had to banish quite a few stray thoughts away. Hey there. She said in a voice that was obviously meant to be seductive. I'm Yutara Siku. And I'm the representative of the Nikanenko Foundation. A pleasure to make you acquaintance. She gave him a wink, and slowly sauntered her way to the seat in front of his desk. Hello, Izuku said, taking a moment to compose himself. I am Izuku Midoriya, head of the Midoriya Foundation. It is nice to meet you as well. Now, I believe we should get down to business. Right. Business, she said, before putting on a fake sad expression, and holding her finger up to her lip. We are so sorry about what happened with Sori. She's always been the dullest knife in the drawer, if you know what I mean. But she's so fast and strong, it's hard for us to keep an eye on her. Still, we'd be willing to do anything to make it up to you. Yutara then leaned over his desk, getting way too close for Izuku's liking, and making his heartbeat way too fast. Anything. I have no intention of suing you, please stop, Izuku told her firmly, trying his hardest to look solely at her face. Yutara gave him a surprised look, before leaning back. I see. It was then that her entire personality changed. The way she sat, moved, the look in her eye, the way she carried herself, everything became less seductive and more casual. So what is it that you want exactly? Yutara asked him, her voice far more serious. I've heard you're a nice guy and all, but I doubt you'd let us go scot-free after something like this. What I want is simple. I would like to have Sori Jaga under my employ. Yutara's eyes went wide. Excuse me? Look, I understand that this may come as a surprise, however, while her assault on my security was horribly stressful, it also proved two things. 1. My security would be ill-equipped to take on extremely powerful villains. As while ultimately my security did greatly weaken her, I had to resort to sending out one of my own daughters to take her down. I don't think I need to tell you how much a failure I feel like as a father, having to do something like that. Even if there was 0% chance she would lose, my children should not be fighting killers, at least not until they become pro-heroes. Izuku explained. And the second thing her assault proved to me, is that she is extremely powerful. More so than many pro-heroes. As such, having her under my employ as head of security would make me feel a lot better about my kids' safety, as well my own. I see. Yutara purred, and Izuku see the wheels turning in her head as she thought of how to get the best deal possible out of this. Eventually, her expression settled into a sinister, Cheshire cat grin. Well, I think we can come to an agreement where everyone wins. Normally we don't allow things like this. We only offer rentals for services, however, given this incident, we're more than willing to be flexible and offer up her contract. For a price. Considering the offense she committed and how badly it'd look if this went public, I hope this price isn't too high, Izuku told her in a warning tone. Well, you have to understand, she is our most powerful fighter, Yutara said. And we spent years cultivating her skills, training her, feeding her the best foods and vitamins to make her the perfect warrior. So in selling her to you, we'd be losing years' worth of time and money. We can ultimately make another one, but still, you understand her value, right? Of course. And you understand your situation, right? Izuku asked, his tone not wavering. Of course. She said without a hint of worry. Now then, shall we negotiate the price? XXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Well, I really fucked up, didn't I? Sori thought as she laid in her hospital bed. It was 2 days after her break-in, and she was really surprised she was not in prison. Because in retrospect, she'd done something really, really dumb. Breaking into private property, destruction of private property, and illegal use of quirk. Seriously, how was she not in jail? Oh, I don't even want to think of what boss is gonna do to me. Sori grimaced. I'm gonna be eating cat food for months. Then, suddenly, the door opened, and Izuku came in, holding a clipboard. Hello, Ms. Jaga. Izuku greeted her formally, pulling up a seat next to her bed. See caretaker. Sori's eyes widened in surprise. Oh shit, I am so sorry about breaking onto your property and thrashing your security. Seriously, my bad. Izuku sighed. Well, thank you for the apology, and at the very least, you'll get the chance to make it up to us. Huh? Sori gave him a confused look. What does that mean? It means, I purchased your contract from Nikanenko, Izuku said, showing her the clipboard with her new contract. Her eyes somehow got even wider. Wait, really? Izuku nodded. While did nearly give me a heart attack, you also proved to be more effective than anything my security system has to offer. As such, I went out of my way to do this. It cost quite a bit, so please don't disappoint me. I can't believe it. I get work for Lady Kiba. Sori grinned with stars in her eyes. I won't disappoint you, sir. I'll start work right away. You're in a hospital bed. Izuku pointed out. Oh right. Sori realized, looking down at her bandaged-up body. Izuku sighed. You can start once you recover from your injuries. Yes, sir. Sori responded, trying to salute him, only to realize that she still could not move. Please don't keep making this mistake, Izuku asked her. I can only promise to try, Sori responded. Chapter 83, Why? Yami was pouting. Honesty, it was one of the cutest things Izuku had seen in a little bit, however, it was his job to put a stop to it. It's fine, Yami, Izuku reassured him from behind his desk, giving him a kind smile. She got past all the grim, Yami said, still pouting. And she beat a lot of them so easily. And she is an extremely powerful fighter. Someone who passed the extremely rigorous test to get a bodyguard license. Something even pro heroes admit is difficult. Izuku told him. To be able to almost defeat her, at your age, is extremely impressive. Yami's pout lessened. He'd seen the seer's recording of the woman fighting the Grim. He had to admit, she was something beyond almost anything he'd seen before. Yami knew that he wasn't the strongest person in the world. Heck, he wasn't even the strongest person here. If he threw all his Grim at Sanson at once, he doubted anything would stop her. Except maybe the Hound, but he still doubted that would work. And of course, heroes like All Might and the American hero Star and Stripe were far beyond his level of strength, or really any level of strength he could hope to achieve. The amount of negativity he would need in order to make something that could fight against people like them, while honestly Yami hoped that that amount of negativity ever came into existence. However, in all honesty, he wasn't too upset about his Grim not being able to stop her. Something he learned via observation is that all quirks have shortcomings. Sanson was a great example of that because Sanson could either be unbeatable or a complete pushover. The slime girl was widely considered to be the strongest person in the house. Able to take on other contenders like Kiba, Fu, Shiruku, and hordes of his Grim without any issue, but against Kei, she is utterly helpless. Kei had one of those quirks that was most effective if you didn't know how it worked. As if you did know, then it would be pretty easy to take her down, by just not looking at her eyes. And Kei couldn't really fight either, meaning that at this point most of the children in the house could beat in her a fight. Sanson was the exception because her entire body acted as her eyes. And while this is more useful than it is detrimental, it also meant that fighting Kei was pretty much impossible. And Kei wasn't her only issue. Her spars against Narat in her Articuana form always ended in less than 2 minutes, and always in Sanson's defeat, and she wasn't even allowed to fight Netsu, as Netsu could very easily accidentally kill her. All quirks had their strength and their weaknesses. Even if Sori had wanted to kill them, they were never in any danger, because she'd never beat Sanson. And his family would be safe. Of course, Izuku was displeased with having to use his siblings to fend off attackers, which is why Yami would work hard to make new Grim, which would strengthen their security system even further. And for that, he would need a lot more negativity. He'd used a lot to create the security system, and now he needed a lot to fix it. So for that, he would need to visit the city again. But now he didn't plan on just wandering the city like last time. No. He had a plan. Yami finally stopped pouting, and his expression turned back to his typical, neutral expression. Dad. I'm going to the city tomorrow, right? Only if you want to. Izuku really wanted to replenish his security system, but he still didn't want to force things onto his son. I do. Yami nodded. I want to go with Amai. I figured that was the case, she is a rather good friend of yours. Izuku smiled. He was very pleased that one of his children had made a friend outside the house, and would do everything in his power to allow Ame to interact more with his children. Show them the world wasn't so cruel. I already called her parents, and they said she'd be delighted to go with you tomorrow. Yami nodded. Who's Shappa, chaperoning us? Well, you'll get two. Mina's going with you, and you'll also be driven around by Mr. Yagi. Do you remember him? He was the one who came here to supervise you all while we were at UA? You met him briefly. Izuku reminded him. Yami nodded, and briefly was an understatement. As one of the kids who went to U.A, he'd only met Mr. Yagi for a few minutes. When he came to the house, and when he left. The only reason he really remembers him is because he looked more like an undead than Fu did, and that boy was an actual zombie. He doubted he'd be able to protect them much, but that is most likely what Mina was there for. Yami looked at the door. If everything went as planned, then they should be coming soon. A few seconds later, the person he'd been waiting for, Kyoku, barged into the room. Daddy, we need to talk. Kyoku, I told you to knock. Izuku lightly scolded. Sorry, Daddy. Kyoku quickly apologized, before returning to looking worried and upset. We need to talk about the new employee. Izuku sighed. He knew this would come up. He already had a talk with his mother and Achiko about his decision to hire Sori. And he knew that he'd be having a similar discussion with Sori. I told myself that I wouldn't be upset about hiring outsiders, but really, Daddy. She attacked the house. Kyoku protested. How can we trust someone like her to keep us safe when she attacked us? Izuku sighed. I told you, she wasn't attacking us, there was a misunderstanding, she never meant to do me, or anyone here any harm. And I've looked, very thoroughly into her background, believe me, she is of no harm to us. She even consented to a psychic probing. Which, if you don't know, is allowing someone to look through your mind for thoughts or memories that indicate you'd be a threat to your employer, which is us. It's something not a lot of people are comfortable with doing, and consenting to it in and of itself shows how innocent she is. We literally looked through her brain and found no proof that she wanted to hurt us. I know it's hard, I don't trust outsiders either, but it's what needs to be done. Kyoku didn't really have any argument against that. I mean, how could you really say she might be dangerous when you literally looked through their mind? Still, she didn't like this decision one bit. That woman had caused her so much stress when she heard about an intruder coming to kill her father, and taking down their Grimm, and now she was just supposed to forgive her? Forgiveness wasn't exactly Kyoku's specialty. Izuku knew this, and so he already had a plan to comfort her. He walked over to her, and picked her up, bringing her back to his desk and sitting down, before placing her on his lap and embracing her. Kyoku, what do you think a father's #1 priority should be? Giving out love and hugs. Kyoku answered, snuggling into Izuku's chest. Close. The #1 priority of a father is to make sure his family is safe. Izuku told her. And yet, I sent my daughter to fight a potential assassin. In pretty every situation, that is unacceptable. The only reason I even considered it is because I looked at her fighting all the Grimm, and figured she didn't have any way of actually hurting Sanson. And I was right. But in the very slim chance I was wrong about that, then I would have sent my daughter directly into harm's way. And thought makes me feel ill. Izuku tightened his grip on the chair, anger and shame directed at himself coursed through him. Honestly, even if he was right in the end and Sanson would have been fine, he still regretted sending her out there at all. Back then he had considered going out there to face Sori himself if she got past all the Grimm. Hoping at the very least if she killed him, she would spare his family and 1A. Ultimately, he didn't because of a few reasons. Firstly, he was pretty certain that if he tried that, at least Achiko, if not many more members of 1A would have stopped and restrained him, gone out to fight her themselves, and died because they were nowhere near her level. Secondly, he was almost 100% sure that Sanson could easily defeat this woman, without any harm coming towards the slime girl. And third, if he died, then chances are this whole operation would fall apart. He had no doubt that DOC would try to salvage this with a replacement, or that his mother would try and fulfill his role, but given how unstable this situation was already, he doubted the Midoriya Foundation could survive his death right now, not to mention all the psychological trauma that would inflict on his children. And so he was backed into a corner and forced to send out his less than 10-year-old daughter to fight for him. Never again. For all the panic Sori had caused him, she also did him a great favor in showing him how his defense system did against A or S rank villains. And the answer was, not so great. Sure, it was extremely unlikely he would ever have to deal with A or S rank villains, considering that A rank villains made up 8% of all villains and S ranks made up less than 1%, but it wasn't impossible. And so Izuku would have to increase his security to handle such villains, or at least stall them long enough for the heroes to show up. Kyoku, you don't want villains to come in and hurt any of us, right? Izuku asked her. Kyoku shook her head so hard Izuku was concerned she'd hurt her neck. Then I need to make sure that our security can handle threats on the level of Sori, Izuku told her. Which it can't. But you know who can handle threats on the level of Sori? Sori. Kyoku begrudgingly, looking like she just swallowed expired milk. That's right. It's very rare to find someone with her talents, and that someone literally knocked down our front door and asked for a job. Izuku explained. Not to mention I was able to do a background check so through that it leaves me with no doubts about her allegiance. This is a golden, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, falling on my lap. I would be a fool not to take it. Kyoku was now the one pouting. As she no longer had any argument outside of she didn't like her, which she knew was a weak argument in the face of Izuku's much stronger ones. She knew Izuku knew much more than her. And he made decisions that she didn't like a lot of the time, but ultimately they proved to be necessary. But sometimes, she felt that Izuku's kind heart could be too kind. She didn't see any issue with her siblings fighting villains. The villains who got all the way here would no doubt be tired after fighting the Grim, and her siblings were extremely powerful. They would be more than capable of handling threats coming their way. But Izuku loved them too much to put them in any kind of danger, and as such, they would need a powerful bodyguard. And Kyoku hated to admit, she did like the idea of having someone so powerful guarding her father's life when they weren't around him. Although she would have preferred that person to be Achiko. But Achiko had a life of her own and didn't live here. Nor would she unless. As a plot brewed in Kyoku's mind, Yami started his own. Hey Dad, I want Kyoku to come outside with us, Yami suggested. Kyoku's head spun to look at Yami, giving him a shocked and betrayed look. That's. Izuku also looked surprised, but he was considering it. I think that's a wonderful idea, Father. Yanda's voice rang inside their heads, and they looked at the doorway to see that the mind reader had let herself in. Kyoko's always so scared and upset about the outside world, I'm worried she'll end up like Fukunoko and shut herself away. Oh, the thought brings me to tears. Yanda whipped a fake tear away from her eye and secretly winked at Yami. Yami smirked, as Yanda did her part of the plan. A few hours earlier. You want me to convince Dad to force Kyoku to go outside with you, and you want me to come to, and tell you what she's thinking. Yanda reiterated what Yami had asked of her. Right. Yami nodded. Yanda gave him an odd look. The boy had come to her room with such a big request, that she didn't see the direct benefit in. Why? Want to know why she hates outside so much? Yami explained. Getting her outside is hard. Need help. Also need to know her thoughts. To help figure out why she was so angry. And help her. Most of the children in the house were pretty happy nowadays, Izuku's fall aside, they were all pretty willing to push aside the negatives of their past, and to some extent their present, to enjoy the many positives they had now. However, there were a few exceptions to this. Those being Kyoku, Kota, Fukunoko, Ken and Fu. Fuku was trying to be more positive and she had plenty of people around her to help her with that. He would get Dakota, Ken, and Fu at different times, but for now, he wanted to try and help Kyoku. For two reasons mainly. Firstly is that she is the most upset at any given point in time, out of all of his siblings. Bringing up anything about the world outside would either cause her to get slightly upset, or really upset. And from what Yami could tell, that was not healthy. And the second reason was, well, he owed her. It was thanks to her that Yami was who he was today. Without her, it would have taken years for Yami to adjust to civilization, and so many things either would have been pushed back or never happened in the first place, like his friendship with Ame, not to mention she saved both him and Izuku years of hard work in trying to get him to adjust. Much like Izuku, he owed her a debt he could never really pay off, but he intended to try. Not to mention it would likely help him in his journey to become a therapist, so it was mutually beneficial anyway. I see. Yanda considered it. She wasn't really sure if this would help out Kyoku, but she was interested in that happening. Kyoko's negativity was something she could do without, but still, that was a lot of work for something that ultimately might be pointless. I'll do it for 10,000 yen. Deal. Yami already had the money in his pocket and threw it on Yanda's bed. He'd been taught that money was a useful tool, and from what he'd seen, that was very true. Yanda grabbed the money, smiling as she counted it. You'll have my full support, dearest brother. Back to the present. Izuku gave this some serious thought. Daddy. Kyoku objected, giving Izuku a tearful look. I don't want to go. Izuku gave her a sad look. All in all, that only convinced him he needed to send her more. It was one thing to prefer staying inside, but it was another to loathe the outside world entirely. Still, he didn't just want to force her. He needed to convince her. Kyoku, I think that going outside might do you some good. You can see that people aren't all trying to hurt you. Izuku told her. But, since I know you really don't want to, I won't force you. Kyoku breathed a sigh of relief. However, Izuku added. If you go outside, not only will I give you 15,000 as part of your allowance, I'll also let you pick what we have for dessert tonight. Kyoku looked conflicted. Izuku gave her this choice for a reason. If she really hated the idea of going outside so much that she would refuse an offer like that, then forcing her outside really would not be the right call. Meanwhile, Kyoku was really struggling to make a call here. The offer was good, and on top of all that, going would make Izuku very pleased with her. Fine. Kyoku relented, not looking particularly happy about her decision. Good. Thank you for giving this a try. Izuku patted her on the head and kissed her forehead, already making her feel better about her decision. You've made me proud. Kyoku smiled a bit, hugging her father. Thank you, Daddy. Well then. Izuku set Kyoku down. You should go get ready for tomorrow, it's gonna be a big day. Okay. Kyoku said, before turning around and leaving. Grabbing Yanda and Yami as she forced them out of the room with her. She closed the door behind her and then glared at her siblings in the hall outside. What are you two up to? I'm just worried for you, dear sister. Yanda lied. Both Kiba and dear Fuku have described the hermit lifestyle as dreadful, and I just don't want that to be your fate. Kyoku gave her a suspicious look, not sure if she would buy that, but she would accept that answer for now. She then turned her attention to Yami. And you? Why do you want to drag me outside so much? Same reason. Yami also lied. Kyoku looked at him with even more suspicion than Yanda. However, unfortunately for her, she was against people who were particularly good at lying. Yanda pretty much had to be good at keeping secrets, seeing as if she didn't then there would be absolute chaos. And Yami was just not very expressive when he wasn't angry. Seeing as she couldn't detect an ulterior motives, Kyoku decided to drop it for now. Alright, I'll believe you for now. But don't expect me to have a good time tomorrow, I'll be busy watching for threats. I'm fairly certain Mina has that covered, dear sister. Yonda told her. Oof. Better safe than sorry. Kyoko argued, before walking away. I'll see you both tomorrow. We live in the same house, you'll probably see us later today. Yonda pointed out. Kyoko ignored her and walked away. XXXXXXXXXXX. Are you really sure about this? Achiko asked once again, standing opposite side to Izuku's desk and looking at him, face to face. You all kept telling me I needed to start trusting people and hiring people to help out, Izuku told her. Yeah, but I didn't mean to hire just anyone, Achiko argued. You and I both know she's not just anyone. Izuku countered. Someone with that level of power and skill would take years if it was even possible at all. And not to mention she's not even in it for the money. She's genuinely loyal to Kiba and by extension me. Bad first impressions aside, she's literally perfect. Except for the part where she's dumb as a rock. Achiko pointed out with a sigh. Yes, she is rather lacking in intelligence. But, with enough direction, we easily work around that. Izuku told her. I've heard of pro heroes and sidekicks who are mentally lacking who have worked around it. Yeah, like All Might. Achiko thought bitterly. Ultimately, I need someone capable of handling threats that a normal security system can't. And she can do that. Izuku restated. Achiko crossed her arms. She knew trying to talk him out of this was pointless. Because while he called Sori's break-in a bad first impression, it was actually the best impression she could have made. Because she accomplished 3 things that pretty much guaranteed her the job. She made herself look strong, she made Izuku's security system look insufficient, and she made Izuku paranoid and desperate to strengthen his defenses. Had she met Sori on better terms, she would have no issue with her being hired. But given that she had been quaking in fear of this woman not even a week ago, it made her a little hesitant to leave her around Izuku and the kids. But, she heavily doubted that anyone would convince Izuku otherwise, and she didn't feel that strongly against having her here that she would keep trying. Well, then shouldn't you wait until she starts working here for you to send the kids out into the city? Achiko asked. All Might will be with them, I know they'll be fine, Izuku reassured her. And I'm sending Mina there for good measure, I haven't known her long, but I don't think she'd ever let anything bad happen to the kids. I guess. Sorry, I'm just a little on edge. Achiko sighed. First you got sick, then the assassination attempts, and then Sori. It's just all been, so. I know. It's a lot. Izuku gave her a sad smile. But we're still alive, still going strong, despite everything. Yeah. Achiko smiled back. No one's knocking us down anytime soon. And Sori will help make sure of that, Izuku told her. Just trust me. Chapter 84, Frustration. Alright, are you all ready to go? Izuku was standing outside the gates of the house, where him, All Might, in skinny form, Mina, Yonda, Yami, Amai, and Kyoku. With All Might's car, the Hercules parked right next to them. They each had little book bags, filled with snacks and other supplies they may need, as well as first aid kits, because Izuku was just that paranoid. Speaking of Izuku's paranoia, they also all had several tracking devices on them. Meaning that Izuku would know where they were at all times. Yes, Daddy. Kyoku nodded. I'm prepared, Father. Yonda said. I'm ready, Mr. Midoriya. Amai answered with a bright smile. Yami nodded. Yonda, you have your hearing dampers? Izuku asked her. Of course, Father. Yonda tilted her head to the side, so that way Izuku could see the devices in her ears. Yonda's hearing dampers acted kind of like reverse hearing aids, or earmuffs. They limited the range in which Yonda could hear people's thoughts. It helped keep Yonda from going insane in large crowds of people. We'll take great care of them, sir. Mina said playfully, giving him a thumbs up. None of them will come in harm's way, you have my word. All Might, or rather, Yagi said. I'm trusting the two of you, please, don't disappoint me, Izuku asked/begged them. Don't worry, it's bad for your health, Mina told him, putting an arm on his shoulder and causing him to flinch. I'll protect these kids with my life. Izuku gave her a small smile. From what he knew of Mina, he could tell she meant that. Thank you. Alright, come on kids, we have much to see. Yagi said as he got into the driver's seat. Mina went into the passenger's seat, and all the kids started climbing into the car. Kyoku was the last to go in, looking extremely hesitant. Izuku went over, and put a hand on her shoulder, and gave her a reassuring smile. Hey, don't be scared. It's only for a few hours. At the end of the day, you'll be coming right back home. To your family. Kyoko gave a small, tenuous smile, before turning back towards the car, and hopping in. Bye, Daddy. I'll see you when I get back. Izuku waved goodbye as the doors closed, and the car took off. XXXXXXXXXXXXX. Despite the supposed purpose of this trip being so that Yami could replenish his negativity reserves, they didn't really plan on going anywhere full of negativity. It was more a day trip than a supply run, if you could call negative emotions supplies. Because Yami could likely replenish his supplies enough by just being around people. And so their first stop was to get some breakfast. And of course, seeing as the person who was driving them was All Might, you could guess that they were in for some good old-fashioned American breakfast, at an American-style diner. So this is an American-style restaurant, I said, looking around as all of them sat in a booth, with menus already on the table. It's really cozy. It does have a very warm feeling to it. Yanda said as she looked through the menus. By the way, who's paying? That would be me, Yagi said with a smile. I have quite a good amount of money stashed away, so feel free to indulge to your heart's desires. Yanda and Yami looked at each other for a second, before looking back at the menu intensely. You know, I wonder what it'd be like, living in America, Amai said absent-mindedly as she looked over the food options. Yeah, imagine how different you'd be, growing up in a whole different county. Mina added. I don't imagine any of you would be too different, Yagi said, before sparing a glance over to the Midoriya children. Well, actually, you three would likely be very different because there is no Midoriya Foundation in America. But that aside, I doubt growing up in America would turn you into a completely different person. It sounds like you've been to America, Mr. Yagi. Amai pointed out. I have. I studied abroad there for quite some time. Yagi explained. It was a very educational experience. And I quite enjoyed my time there. Interesting. What was it like? Yanda asked, sounding slightly curious. Well, it's a very different place. It's big. Much bigger than Japan, and every different state has a different culture, and different way of doing things. Yagi explained. It can almost feel like each state is a different country at times. But all of them are bound by the same, American spirit. But regardless of how different they seem on the outside, we're all still the same on the inside. And even though I was born and raised in Japan, a year into my studies, no one could tell the difference between myself and them. Yep. People are all the same. Kyoku thought. Except for Dad. And Achiko. And my siblings. But the rest of them are the same. It was at this time the waitress came. Good morning everyone, do you have your orders ready? One of everything, Yami said almost immediately. Ha! Everyone gave Yami a look of pure shock, including the waitress, who almost dropped her notepad. One of everything, Yami repeated, his expression nor tone changing, as he waved his hand over the entire menu. Young Yami, I know I said you could have whatever you wanted, but it's not good to waste food, Yagi told him. Not waste. Eating it all. Yami said. One of everything. Surely, you can't possibly eat one of everything on this menu. There is quite a large amount of food items here. Yagi pointed out, holding up the menu to exemplify his point. One. Of. Everything. Yami repeated. Not backing down. The two stared at each other for a few seconds, before Yagi caved. Well, I suppose we can't just pack up whatever leftovers remain. One of everything for him then. One of everything thing for him then. The waitress said, getting over her shock and writing that down, before looking back up at everyone. And, the rest of you? I would like the gold dust, strawberry, and cinnamon pancakes, please. Yanda said, causing the waitress to jump at suddenly hearing a voice in her head. My apologies, young Yanda here can only speak using her quirk. Yagi quickly explained. It's not something she can help. I see. Once again the waitress quickly got over her shock and wrote down the order. So that's 1 gold dust strawberry and cinnamon pancakes. Sir. You are aware that this is going to be very expensive. Like, very very expensive, right? Trust me, I have more than enough money to pay for this. All Might chuckled. Although I will perhaps need to bring it up to their father that when I offered to pay, they decided to make their orders as expensive as possible. You're the one who said order our here's desires. It's not my fault I like nice things. Yanda defended herself, crossing her arms and giving a cute pout. Yeah, come on Mr. Yagi, you can't say something like that, and then get upset when they pull something like this, Mina added, playfully nudging him with her elbow. I'm only kidding. Yagi laughed. It just took me a bit off guard is all. You're telling me. These kids are merciless. The waitress thought, and Yanda gave her a partially offended look that the waitress didn't catch. I'd like some eggs and bacon please. Mina asked. Alright, and eggs and bacon, and how would you like the eggs? The waitress asked. Sunny side up. Mina answered. Alright, and anything for the other 2 kids? The waitress asked. Yanda ordered gold dust strawberry pancakes. What are those? I asked. It's a stack of 3 pancakes, covered in a strawberry cinnamon syrup, and then sprinkled with bits of gold. The waitress explained. And the only people who waste money on it are people who never had to work for anything in their life. Yanda tried not to glare at the woman for that thought. What does gold taste like? I wondered, with a look of awe on her face. Who knows? Why don't you find out? Yanda asked. Wanting her to order it just to spite the waitress. Is that really okay, Mr. Yagi? I didn't know how much that cost, but she would guess that anything with gold on it would be very expensive. It's fine. This may be the only time you get to experience this, so take the opportunity while you can. Yagi advised her. Okay. I'd like gold dust strawberry pancakes, eggs sunny side up with bacon, hash browns, and French toast, I ordered. Where are you gonna put that? Thought everyone as they looked at Amai in shock. Except for Yami who was unfazed. I see, another order of gold dust strawberry pancakes, another order of sunny side up eggs and bacon, an order of hash browns, and an order of French toast. The waitress wrote all that down. Alright, anything for the other little lady? Chocolate chip pancakes. Kyoku ordered. And that's all? The waitress was honestly more surprised she didn't order something crazy. Yes. Kyoku answered curtly. Alright, 1 order of chocolate chip pancakes. The waitress jotted that down. And lastly anything for your grandfather. Yagi held his jaw shut to keep blood from shooting out of his mouth. Grandfather. I know I'm not as young as I used to be, but do I really look that old? Yanda gave him a funny look, and Yagi didn't quite understand what it meant. Well, I'll have some waffles and a coffee. Decaf. Yagi ordered. You sure about that? The waitress asked, raising an eyebrow. I could not deal with a bunch of rich brats with caffeine. Yanda rolled her eyes. Quite sure, caffeine doesn't really mix well with my current condition. Yagi laughed. Oh, that makes sense. the waitress said as she jotted his order down. Poor old man. Has to deal with health issues on top of all this bullshit. Okay, then how about drinks? Hand-squeezed lemonade. Yami and Yanda said at the same time, immediately getting the most expensive thing on the menu. Orange juice. Kyoku ordered. Water, Amai ordered. With lots of ice. Pepsi, Mina ordered. Really young Ishido? A soda first thing in the morning? Not sure your parents would approve. Yagi said. Mina stuck out her tongue at him. Alright, if that's all, I'll go get your order ready. It's gonna take a while though. The waitress said, looking at Yami. That's fine, we're in no rush, Yagi said. With that, the waitress very quickly left their table. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. I can't believe we had to get them an entirely separate booth. Yanda said to everyone else. Turns out Yami had ordered so much food that there wasn't even space for everyone else's order. So they stuck him in a separate booth and had all his food on the table in front of him, as well as some on some smaller tables next to him. Amai was with him in that booth with her own food, as Yami had conceded to needing some help finishing everything. And they were determined to leave no leftovers. Seriously, where does it all go? Mina said as she watched the two of them destroy their food, while she slowly ate some of her own. Well, he did grow up in the woods eating raw meat, so it makes sense that young Yami would appreciate food like this, Yagi said as he sipped his coffee. That makes sense, but man did not take that girl for a heavy eater, Mina noted, before she noticed Kyoku making a peculiar expression. That being she was actually smiling. It's not that Kyoku never smiled, it's just she didn't smile around Mina or her classmates, so she rarely ever saw it. Kyoku was thoroughly enjoying her pancakes, eating them slowly, and savoring every single bite. Kyoku loved chocolate. And she quite enjoyed pancakes as well. And while this wasn't the first time she had the combination of the two, that didn't make the experience any less euphoric. For a minute, she forgot that she was outside, surrounded by unknown people. Waha! But only for a minute. Everyone looked to a nearby booth, and saw a very young boy, sitting with his parents, crying his eyes out. I want that! The child cried, pointing to all the food Yami and Amai were eating. I want that! Son, you couldn't eat all that. His father said. I'm not sure how they can eat all that. Yes, I can. I want it. The child demanded. The child continued to cry, making unreasonable demands the entire time. Kyoku stared at the child and their family clenched her fork tightly, and Yanda paid very close attention to Kyoko's thoughts. Just shut up. She heard Kyoko think. Not now, Kyoku. I'm busy. Yanda heard another voice in Kyoko's head. A voice that she assumed was her original father's voice. But I'm hungry. She heard another voice, this time sounding like an even younger Kyoku. Yanda had to really focus in. She assumed what she was hearing was a memory. And memories could be rather tricky to listen to for multiple reasons. The main reason was she couldn't see what was happening, only hear. And memories, unlike Kyoku herself, Yanda could only hear the parts of a memory that the person was actively thinking about, meaning she often didn't get the full picture. Daddy, I'm so hungry it hurts. She heard the younger Kyoku say. I'll feed you when I'm done. Just go away. Her father shouted. Mommy, can I please have some food? She heard the young Kyoku ask. Ask your father. She heard now a more mature female voice, which she assumed was her mother, said dismissively. But he said little Kyoku got cut off. Look, mommy has stuff to do, so if you want food, ask your father. Her mother said, sounding very annoyed. But once again poor little Kyoku got cut off. I said ask your father. Make me repeat myself again, and you won't be getting any food for the rest of the day. Her mother told her. Just tell him to shut up. Kyoku thought, seemingly out of her flashback. Scream. Yell. Threaten him. You can't be like him. You can't. You can't be like him? Interesting. Yonda thought.
Meanwhile, Yami had noticed the significant increase in Kyoko's negative emotions and took a good long look at her.
Anger was the most prominent emotion, and it made the most sense. That crying was really annoying. But he was also picking up a good amount of sadness, fear, and envy. All of which confused him. He knew this was going to be difficult. Hence why he asked Yonda to come alone. Hopefully, with their combined information, they could fully understand Kyoku.
Eventually, the parents convinced their kid to stop, but Kyoku continued to glare at the family.
Yonda and Yami weren't the only people to notice Kyoku's change in mood. Mina had also noticed and planned on doing something about it.
Hey, Kyoku, your pancakes are gonna get cold if you don't start eating them again.
Mina reminded her.
That did the trick at breaking Kyoku out of her one-sided staring contested, as her eyes widened, and she quickly took another bite of her food. Yami could see the negative emotions die down significantly, although her mood was still much worse than it was previously.
Hey, so you really like chocolate, huh? Mina asked Kyoku. I heard that Sato's triple chocolate cake is absolutely to die for. And as someone who's tasted his brownies before, I can confidently say, that man knows his chocolate. Really? Kyoku was now hooked, having seemingly forgotten about the earlier incident, as she and Mina got into a discussion about chocolate. Damn it, I was getting good info. Yonda thought, giving Mina a brief glare. She couldn't really blame Mina for, well, making her sister not as miserable, but she was impeding her goals a bit, as now Kyoko's thoughts were filled with chocolate instead of anything useful. Yonda, her emotions were strange. She heard Yami think. She didn't look back though. She didn't want things to seem suspicious. We need to talk. Soon. She gave him a secret thumbs up, before making her move. Excuse me, I need to use the bathroom. Yonda then got up, and went towards the bathroom, giving Yami a look that indicated she wanted him to follow. Me too, Yami said, before quickly heading off in the same direction. XXXXXXXXXXXXX. Are you sure we should be talking in here? Yami asked her, as they both stood in the men's bathroom. It's fine. Yonda rolled her eyes. Trust me, no one will bother us here. As if on cue, a man suddenly walked into the bathroom and saw them. He opened his mouth to tell Yonda she shouldn't be here, but Yonda gave him a glare and told him. Get out or I'll tell your date about body pillow collection. The man's face turned white in fear for a second before he immediately turned around and left. Yonda smirked and turned back to Yami. I like to keep track of useful information I find in people's minds. Like that. You know, in case it becomes useful. That sounds kind of evil, but okay. Yami thought. Moving on, you said her emotions were weird? What does that mean? Yonda asked. Right. She mostly angry when boy cried. But also there was sad. And fear. And jealous. Yami explained. Huh, well, I can understand the anger. Be glad you can't hear that kid's thoughts, I promise you it was more annoying than his crying, but aside from that, she was also reliving some really bad memories about her parents. Which is probably also where the fear and sadness come from, but jealousy? Are you sure? Yonda asked him. Yami nodded. Jealousy is easy to see. It's very green. But sick green. Like vomit. It looks gross. Still, why would she be feeling jealous? Yonda thought about it for a moment. Unless she was jealous about the parents being nice. But she has a nice dad now. Izuku's great. Better than those two ever could be. So what is she jealous of? We need more information. Yami thought. That much is clear, although that pink idiot is gonna make things difficult. Yonda scowled. She's great at cheering people up. You don't like her much. Yami pointed out. It's not that I don't like her, it's that I don't like stupid people. Yanda admitted. They never think, so it's hard for me to understand them. Not her fault. Yami told her. I know. It's just frustrating. It's a reminder that I'm actually deaf. Yanda sighed. Anyway, we'll need to keep a close eye on her. So stay focused. Don't let food or your little girlfriend distract you. Not girlfriend, but okay. Yami responded. She will be one day. Because she is definitely developing a crush on you, and you're definitely not getting anyone better. Not because you're a bad person, but because you look like a monster. Yanda was not afraid of hurting Yami's feelings here because, as someone who could read thoughts, she knew perfectly well that these kinds of comments did not affect Yami at all. He had pretty thick skin when it came to this kind of stuff. Seriously, she's pretty, and she has a good personality? Do you have any idea how rare that is? Tell her you're learning how to cook, and get that relationship in the bag. No. Yami told her. Any more useful information? Well, she did think something odd. They can't be like him. That's what she was thinking. Yanda told him. I don't know what it means at the moment, but with more time, I'm confident we can figure it out. Right. Nothing else? Yami asked. Nope. Yanda told him. With his business done, Yami proceeded to walk past her out of the bathroom, intent on finishing his meal. Yanda sighed and shook her head. This is going to be a very long day. Chapter 85, Bad Luck. The next destination was an arcade. It was a rather large arcade, meaning that there were plenty of different games and activities for them to do. But it seems like Mina and Amai were stuck on one game in particular. Oh yeah. Get wrecked, Pinky! Amai shouted as she and Mina competed at Dance Dance Revolution. Amai had put her hair up in a ponytail and had a serious expression on her face. Shifting into Gaming Amai. Gaming Amai was much less kind than normal Amai, as her competitive spirit took complete control over her mind, body, and soul. Not bad for a half pint. Mina said as she matched Amai's pace. But you'll have to do better than that. All Might, Yami, Yanda, and Kyoko looked at the intense competition in front of them. I have a feeling they're gonna be at this for a while. All Might chuckled, before turning to the children. Well then, go have fun, children, but remember to stay together. I need to use the bathroom. Perfect. Yanda thought, grinning with a sinister glint in her eye. Now it's just the three of us. No one to get in our way. Well, dear sister. Brother. Yanda grabbed her two siblings' arms and pulled them towards some games. Let's go play. XXXXXXXXX. It had been about half an hour, and nothing eventful happened. They just played games and had fun. That was all well and good, but she had a job to do. And so now they were at skee ball, playing it normally until Kyoko accidentally dropped one of her balls on the floor. She was about to try and pick it up when the man who was playing next to them picked it up first and offered it to her. Here you go, little lady. The man said, giving her a kind smile as he offered the ball. Kyoko glared at the man as she slowly reached for the ball. Damn it, stop pretending to be nice. Show me who you really are. Kyoko thought. Meanwhile, Yami noticed Kyoko's emotions suddenly flare up. As anger, fear and sadness filled her once more. Interesting. Kyoko took the ball back, and the man smiled at her, receiving nothing but a glare in return. You're not kind. No one is buying it. You're not my family. Only they can be kind. That's some logic she's got there. Yanda thought to herself. Fear and sadness is back. Yami thought, sharing that information with Yanda. Still doesn't make much sense to me. Yanda thought. Even now, I still don't understand her. Why is she so determined to think everyone else is terrible? Well, if this was easy, then I guess I wouldn't have been hired. Well, I guess I should leave the theorizing for later. I'll just continue to observe for now. XXXXXXXXXXX. They continued to play around the arcade for about an hour. The trio was currently playing a basketball game, and not doing too well, to say the least. Kyoku pouted. This game sucks. Doesn't suck, we're just bad at it. Yami pointed out. Lot of people love it. I think. I don't understand the appeal. Yanda said, before noticing something. Ha! Leave me alone. They heard someone cry. All of them turned, and saw a young boy, holding a bunch of tickets, cowing in fear against one of the arcade machines, as another boy loomed over him threateningly. Sure, just give me the tickets. The other boy said, his fingers turning into drills and spinning around threateningly. Unless you want to see what my quirk can do to you. Good grief. Yanda shook her head in distaste. Yami was about to step in when he noticed a change in Kyoko's feelings. He looked at her, and even without the use of his quirk, he could see a change in her mood. With her smirking to herself. And with his quirk, he saw that this development seemed to please her for some reason. Which was pretty alarming. Horrible. People are horrible. Kyoko thought to herself. Why is she so happy about that? Yanda thought. However, they didn't have much more time to think about that, because the bully's drill fingers were getting far too close to the victim boy's skin. Yami. Please go and scare him with your face. Yanda asked her brother. Yami nodded and walked up to the boy. Hey, Yami said, from behind the boy. Leave. Ha! Do you want dash? The boy turned around and saw Yami's face, and all the confidence left him in an instant, and his own face went almost as white as Yami's. Ah! Run, Yami commanded, as black goop started leaking from his mouth, and the boy could almost swear Yami's blood-red eyes glowed threateningly. Or else. The boy's fight or flight instincts kicked in, and he booked it. He ran away so fast that he tripped, and hastily pulled himself up, and ran out of sight. Yami turned his head towards the bullied child, who looked at him with the same amount of terror as the bully. The red-eyed boy shrugged and returned to his siblings. Done. Oof. He gets saved, and he doesn't even look grateful. Kyoko pouted, trying to hide her smug look. Because they're cowards. All cowards. Yeah. Is she trying to reassure herself? Yanda gave her little sister a confused look. Does she want people to be terrible? Now, sometimes people confused Yanda. Just because she could hear their thoughts, didn't mean they always made sense. Or at least didn't make sense to her. This was one of those times. I'll have to talk with Yami later. This is just bizarre. Yanda shook her head. That girl is a mess. XXXXXXXXX. So she get upset when people help her. And happy when people are mean. Yami summarized. The two had decided to have their conversation outside of the arcade, away from prying eyes and ears. Yup. It's almost as if the girl wants to believe the world is full of bad people. Yanda told him. There was a pause, as Yami took a second to think that over. Maybe she does. Yami retorted. Maybe she want to believe that world is bad. And gets angry when belief is shown to be no good. That actually almost makes sense. But why? Yanda asked. What possible reason could she have for wanting the world to be horrible and filled with bad people? Good question. Yami responded as he got back to thinking. The two stayed there and thought for a while, but no ideas came to them. No matter how much they thought. Ag. This going nowhere. Yanda said, getting irritated by the whole event. We'll have to keep watching her. See what more we can find. All right. Yami nodded. Go back inside. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX. After spending another few hours in the arcade, they finally exited, with Mina and Amai holding a ton of prizes. Kyoko left with a small stuffed horse and a smile on her face. "Hey sis." Yanda grabbed Kyoko's shoulder and separating her from the rest of the group. "Let's use the bathroom." "Huh? But I don't need to use the bathroom," Kyoko told her. "Yes, you do." "No, come on," Yanda said as she began dragging Kyoko back into the arcade. XXXXXXXXX. After the two went into the girls' bathroom and shut the door behind them. "Okay, what do you want?" Kyoko asked, not particularly pleased about being dragged here against her will. "I just wanted to talk a little bit," Yanda said in her sickeningly sweet tone. "So, what do you think of Amai?" Kyoko turned away, while pouting heavily, before thinking something Yanda wasn't meant to hear. "She's too nice. And she loves her parents too much. Lucky. 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 She's just lucky. She's fine," Kyoko told her, not noticing all the stuff she'd accidentally told her. "Is that so? And what about Mina?" Yanda asked. "She's too nice too. I bet she's like Kay and has sucky parents." Once again, this was something Yanda was most likely not meant to hear. "So it's all about her parents then," Yanda concluded. "She's okay," Kyoko told her grudgingly. "Why are you asking me all this?" "No reason. We can go now," Yanda told her, immediately walking towards the exit. "What? Wait, what was that all about?" Kyoko ran to catch up to her. Yanda just shrugged. "I told you it was nothing. Just wanted to pick your thoughts." That will be it for this part. I hope everyone enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like and comment if you want part 17. If you want to hear more from me, subscribe. I hope to see you all in the next one.